These are the Brum Tech Scene interviews. I'm Stuart Langridge, and I'm here in the Library of Birmingham with Ryan Dean Corke.
Hello, yeah.
So, Ryan, you've just moved from Substract to McCann's, yes? One of the things I noticed when I arrived here in the library is that there's some kind of app to help you find your way around the library, and Substract did that. Were you involved with that?
Yeah, I mean, the app referring to is Dozens and Trails, and we were sort of asked to sort of like help the library out with sort of like essentially sort of showcasing a bit of their archive content. Now, being a library, naturally they've got lots of paper, and a lot of it is stored away in boxes, and a lot of it isn't just words and pages, it's beautiful imagery, and it's also quite unique, a lot of it as well. I mean, a lot of it is original copies, and a lot of it is absolutely stunning. And essentially the project was, which was HLF sponsored, was all about sort of showcasing this. And we helped come up with the idea of this app, Dozens and Trails, which was all about these collections, these dozens of sort of themed collections of content, as well as trails, which would be more sort of located around the city, so you could actually walk around and sort of have a look at the monuments or famous buildings, or see, for example, there'd be an old photo that you would sort of like, you know, it'd tell you where that photo was taken, so you could go there and sort of think, well, that looks quite different now, that's knocked down, that's now you know, Poundland, etc. But yeah, and it was nice because I mean, generally the content was great, and I mean, a personal favourite of mine was they had a big collection of sort of World War II propaganda posters, and I mean,
ours or theirs?
Ours, but then again, like, I like the other sides as well, but it was the art history and the graphic design of them is brilliant, like, and I love that sort of thing. And with every sort of collection within the app, there was always a bit of a write-up as well, giving them all a bit of context, which again was quite nice. But yeah, so we helped with that, and then through that we helped do a few other little things as well, because as the launch of the library was looming, there was quite a few interfaces and little bits and pieces which needed skinning up, so to speak, so we sort of helped with that as well.
I can imagine. I should say, we are sitting here in the Library of Birmingham next to the glass amphitheatre, which you can see from outside. They very kindly let us film here, so thank you very much to the library. It's brilliant. Every time I come here, someone says, "Oh, have you seen this bit?" And it's this whole entire section I had no idea existed.
Completely, yeah. It's amazing how they do keep it so fresh, to be honest.
I know, and that's a good example of the thing we were talking about earlier about statues and the city changing and things like that. The library's a good example of what modern Birmingham looks like. Yeah,
exactly. Interestingly, another project I was working on at Substract is essentially a touchscreen interface, like a visitor centre interface, I guess, for the Golden Square project in the Jewellery Quarter, which is right by the Rosevilla Tavern and in front of the Big Peg.
But by the clock?
Yes, completely. And they've got like a nice building sort of being created there, sort of out of nice beautiful corten steel and this sort of gold sort of cladding, which is nice, and lots of glass. And one of these things is going to house like a big TV screen, which we're going to layer touch foil in front of on the glass to essentially make it a big touch screen. And as part of that, we sort of designed and built sort of an interface for this. So I mean, it's all very much so being worked on at the moment, and it was one of the last things I got to work on before I left. But that's been quite exciting as well, because, you know, again, some of that content as well, I mean, a lot of it is just sort of visitor information, sort of like, where is this, where are, you know, cafes, bars, jewellers maybe, I don't know. And exactly, and but another part of it was sort of like a sort of like a then and now bit, which again was about essentially photos of like the Jewellery Quarter as it was, and then you sort of like, you tap a photo on the map and it enlarges, and then you can sort of like tap it again and it fades in between both of them, which is quite cool.
Oh, so you can see how all the old jewellery workshops have now become cool flats.
Yes, exactly. It's heartbreaking, some of it. You can see like a little road, like cobbled streets, like nice workshops, like beautiful signage, and then and then it's just like rubbish now. It's
Tesco.
terrible. Yeah, exactly. I'm Birmingham. Why do you do it?
But it's pretty. I mean, I like the architecture of the city now much more than the. People keep telling me that concrete brutalist is a real style, and I should appreciate it more than I do. And you think, well, no.
I think I'm on your side of this, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, it works in Italy or Spain, where the climate is hot and it doesn't go green or slimy. But that's just
So you're quite heavily involved, I think, with the Good for Nothing project in Birmingham. What's that all about?
Myself and Lisa Barrett, another designer in Birmingham, we started up the Birmingham chapter of Good for Nothing. Now, Good for Nothing itself has been going on a few years now, successfully, and it's sort of spread all over the country. So they're in Manchester, Bristol, Brighton, London, obviously where it began, but they've spread all as far as sort of San Francisco, Melbourne, Brisbane, I think, Rotterdam. So it's quite cool. But the thing itself it's essentially a group of sort of creative people getting together and helping sort of like, whether it's a charity or a social enterprise, out with essentially whatever they can do within a short amount of time. So I guess one example is last time myself and Lisa, we found an initiative called Change Kitchen in Birmingham, and essentially it's a vegetarian, vegan sort of catering company, but they also hire sort of homeless people and people who are sort of struggling, who have struggled in the past with addictions. And it's a way of sort of getting them away from any sort of potential negative influences and helping them not only develop more sort of social skills and help with everything, but also potentially to get them into the working world again. And so over that weekend, we I think it was around 25 people turned up. And we sort of provided food for everyone, drinks, coffee, everything to help them get on with everything. In that time, we sort of helped them create sort of like a smaller sort of microsite website, a new menu design template, so the owner could sort of easily update stuff. Sort of new roller banners for only like the design of it, obviously not printed in that time. But yeah, it's essentially all about these sort of like small initiatives or charities which don't have vast sums of money.
So it's a hack day, but focused around one specific initiative.
Exactly. So each sort of chapter, like heads, I guess, and it's not closed like we are the heads. It's like anyone can help, anyone can get involved, and that's how myself and Lisa got involved. But yeah, it's completely about these sort of like the heads finding these sort of charities or social enterprises, and then creating a day, finding a venue, organising everything, and then just inviting people along. So that's designers, developers, sort of like photographers, copywriters, everything essentially. And essentially, like, we sort of then hand everyone 3 briefs or so, and everyone just goes mad. They sort of they sort of like sort of take what they can from that brief and just sort of run with it over, whether it's 24 hours, 48 hours or whatever really. But it's amazing what people can get done when they're not constrained by like a client, and kind of like, I mean, they are still the client, but it's not like there's a project manager and like agendas,
It's, pure creativity, but importantly, with the kind of underlying sense that you're doing a good thing for the universe.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why I got involved really, because it's not so much at Substract, but sometimes you do find yourself being a little bit down, despite loving what you do, being down with the fact that you're just helping people make money or sell products, which doesn't ultimately contribute anything to the world. This stuff is important, but equally it's nice to be able to say, you know what, I'm doing this because it feels like the right thing to do. Exactly.
I mean, it's lovely.
Karma points, yeah.
So you're involved with a lot in the city. What's going on in Birmingham that you're not involved with but think is interesting?
I'm really into Glug coming up to Birmingham. So Glug is a sort of like a creative meetup. It started down in London, and again, like a lot of things do, and it's sort of grown and grown and grown over the years, and it's now this kind of big thing where they sort of have it once a month or once every 2 months or so. But they invite sort of designers and photographers and illustrators from agencies, all just renowned freelancers, and they come up and they do a talk. So very similar to like the Multipack Presents and so Hydra Hack and some of the other things going around the city. So it's along those lines. But I and a few other friends from Birmingham, we went down to London a few times and saw it, and it was always good. And in a way, that's kind of what spawned Bad Ego, which is like a smaller scale like designer meetup for Birmingham, just because there wasn't one at the time, and so that's kind of why we started that. And but yeah, Glug coming to Birmingham is wicked. They had one event probably about a month and a half ago or so, and it's called sort of themed around Midland Masters. So again, it was like designers and illustrators, etc., from the Midlands, and sort of like one from London, as always. Sort of like just, and it was just sort of talking people through their process and how they go about what they do and what work they've produced. So it was cool, because sometimes you get like an insight into like a different profession, but also like how someone else works is quite similar to how you work, even though it's quite a different end product in a way.
You're doing different things, but you can get all sorts of tips, thoughts about how someone organises.
Exactly, yeah.
That's why I'm a developer primarily, consultant stuff, but I like hanging out with designers because I learn a whole new bunch of stuff about how to work.
Yeah. Completely, yeah, and again with developers it's the same way as well. It's kind of like I always find that there's a lot more meticulous ways to work.
We don't do anything meticulous. You start with a text editor and that's it.
Look, yeah.
Slightly more complicated than that, perhaps.
But yeah, the first event was great, and it was sort of like the initial team of Glug were involved. They sort of mainly sort of helped out, I think, whereas it was mainly Kerry from Created in Birmingham and Michelle, Cassie, and a lot of others from Inky Goodness, so which is another sort of like Birmingham-based sort of like, they do a lot sort of like, they do like little events as well as sort of like design work and exhibitions and stuff. So it was cool, it was good, and it's nice to see that sort of thing get to the Midlands.
Yeah, here in the city. What is it called, Glug?
I do not know, actually. I've never questioned that.
Is it like something user group?
Maybe. I'm really not sure. All I know is that their motto is not working, not networking.
Oh, right. Maybe it's just the noise that beer makes when you pour it into a glass.
It's often what happens, which is good.
Excellent. So we're doing a series of these interviews, as you know, and I like to ask people, who do you think we should interview next?
It didn't take me long to think of this person to recommend, to be honest, but Mark Steadman. He is a Birmingham native and an avid developer, podcaster, tinkerer. He does a lot, so I think he would be good for this. I mean, there doesn't really go a weekend when he doesn't sort of either create and release a new podcast episode or a new tool or something he's made, like where he'll sort of think that thing doesn't do exactly what I want it to do, so I've made it myself, and here you go, it's on GitHub, have a play,
And that sort of thing's really cool, Yeah, that sense of there's so much stuff going on, little things happening all around the place.
Yeah, completely, and it's wicked. Just as always with Birmingham as well, it's like it doesn't matter if it doesn't always work. It's as long as it's there and being done, it's good, and
stuff happening. Yeah, exactly. And the final question: what's your favourite biscuit?
Rich tea.
And they're a coaster.
I'd agree, but I like a rich tea. Okay, going the other way. Beanies Whirl.
Oh, well, that is the opposite end of the biscuit spectrum.
Yeah.
Excellent. So from here in the Library of Birmingham, thank you very much, Ryan Dean Corke.
Cheers, no problem.